My daughter called me a burden, right to my face, on my 65th birthday, in the home I built with my own 2 hands. Then she kicked me out onto the street. She thought the old man was broken, finished. She thought she'd taken everything, but she forgot one crucial detail. A secret my late wife, Margaret, left behind. A secret that was about to dismantle their greed, piece by piece. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone in this world. My name is Thomas Peterson, and this is the story of how my sanctuary became my prison, and how I fought my way out. The ice swan was melting. It sat in the center of the dining room, dripping slowly onto the expensive linen tablecloth. It was huge, ridiculous. Chloe, my daughter, insisted we needed it. "It's a statement piece, Daddy," she had said. I watched it die, a slow, agonizing drip. The jazz quartet played softly in the corner. The music couldn't cover the silence Margaret left behind. It had been 3 years since Margaret passed. 3 years of emptiness. I sat alone in the leather armchair by the library door, my usual spot. The room was packed, a sea of unfamiliar faces. They were Chloe's friends, associates of her husband Kevin. They drank the champagne I paid for. They admired the art Margaret and I collected over a lifetime. They looked right through me, like I was just another piece of furniture, an old man waiting for the end. Chloe and Kevin moved in right after the funeral. I was broken then, lost in the fog of grief. "Just temporarily, Dad," Chloe had said. Her eyes were wide. Sincere, I thought. "You shouldn't be alone in this big house. We're here to help." I believed her. I needed to believe her. I was vulnerable, and they knew it. But temporary turned into forever, and helping me slowly, insidiously, transformed into taking over. It started small, rearranging the kitchen, moving my favorite chair. Then it got bigger. My study became Kevin's office. Margaret's rose bushes were dug up for a patio. They were erasing us, bit by bit, and I let them. I just wanted peace, but peace was expensive, and tonight the price was about to skyrocket. "All right, everyone, if I could have your attention," Kevin's voice boomed across the room. It cut through the chatter. He stood by the grand fireplace. One hand rested on the mantelpiece. Like he owned the place, Kevin was handsome, slick, polished. The kind of man who wears a $1,000 suit but has empty pockets. I never trusted him. Margaret hadn't trusted him either. She always said his eyes were hungry. Tonight, they looked starved. Chloe joined him. She wore a shimmering silk dress. She looked so much like Margaret. It hurt. But the warmth, the quiet strength Margaret possessed, gone, utterly absent in Chloe. "We are so thrilled to celebrate Daddy's big 65. Chloe chirped. Her voice was too high, too bright. I braced myself. Their announcements usually cost me money, or my dignity. This time, it felt like an ambush. Kevin smiled. His teeth were too perfect. "Thomas, we know how much you love this house." He paused. The room held its breath. "But let's be honest," he continued, his tone shifting. "Condescending. It's a lot for one man to manage. The stairs, the upkeep. It's wearing you out." He made me sound ancient, feeble, incapable. "So," Chloe cut in, bouncing on her heels, excited, like she was giving me a gift, "we've decided to make things easier for everyone." She gestured toward the stairs, toward the master suite. Margaret's room, our room. "We are going to take over the master suite." I stared at them. The master suite. The place where Margaret's scent still lingered, where her favorite books still sat on the nightstand. They wouldn't dare take it over? My voice sounded strained, weak. I hated how weak I sounded. And where exactly am I supposed to sleep? I wanted her to say it, out loud, in front of everyone. Chloe didn't even blink. "We've renovated the basement apartment. It's cozy, private, and best of all, no stairs. It's perfect." The basement, the storage area. It smelled like damp concrete and dust, windowless, cold. A tune. They wanted to put me in the basement. Like an old unwanted dog, the humiliation burned in my chest. "They can't move to the basement, Chloe. That's ridiculous." I tried to stand, but my knees felt weak. "That's my room. That's Margaret's room." Kevin's smile tightened. The mask slipped. "It's not a request, Thomas. It's a necessity. He stepped closer, towering over me, intimidating me in my own home. Emma and Liam are getting older, he said, referring to my grandchildren. Using them as pawns. They need their own wing. We need the main floor. This isn't about the children, I said, a spark of anger flickering in my chest. This is about you. This is about control. They wanted my room. They wanted my life. But that wasn't the worst part. The real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. Speaking of control, Kevin said smoothly. He pulled a thick envelope from his jacket pocket. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a party. It was a hostile takeover. A strategic strike. He handed me the envelope. Heavy. Ominous. Inside were legal documents, a home equity line of credit. A HOLEC. I looked at the numbers. A massive loan. Leveraging nearly the entire value of the house. My house. The house Margaret and I spent 40 years building. What is this for? I demanded, but I already knew. Kevin's consulting firm was always one massive deal away from success, or one bad investment away from collapse. He was a gambler in a suit. It's an opportunity, Thomas, Kevin said. His voice was sharp now. No more pretending. A major contract. A sure thing. But we need the capital from the house to secure it. He leaned in close. I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. My scotch. We'll triple the investment in 6 months, he promised. A lie. Smooth and practiced. I looked at the papers. The numbers blurred. I looked at Kevin's expectant face. Then at Chloe. Her eyes were cold. Hard. Like stones. They weren't just greedy. They were reckless. No, I said. The word felt strange in my mouth. I hadn't said no to Chloe in years.
Absolutely not,
I repeated, stronger this time. I tossed the envelope onto the coffee table. I will not risk my home for your sure thing. The room went completely silent. The jazz quartet stopped abruptly. A saxophone squeaked. The silence was deafening. All eyes were on us. The old man finally fighting back. Chloe's face turned an ugly shade of red. The polished veneer shattered. No, she shrieked. What do you mean? No, I mean I'm not signing it, I said, finally standing up. My knees protested, but I ignored the pain. I felt a surge of defiance, a strength I hadn't felt since Margaret died. And I'm not moving to the basement. How dare you? Chloe yelled. Hysterical. After everything we've done for you. We gave up our lives to move in here and take care of you. The lie was so massive it almost took my breath away. You gave up a cramped apartment because Kevin lost his job and you couldn't afford the rent. I shot back, the truth finally spilling out, years of resentment erupting like a volcano. The guests gasped. The truth was ugly and loud. You are so selfish, she screamed. Tears of rage welled in her eyes. Not sadness. Rage. We manage everything. And you just sit there holding onto your money like a miserable old muzzer. I fund this entire lifestyle, Chloe, I roared, gesturing around the room. Every champagne flute. This whole ridiculous party. That melting swan. She stepped closer, her finger jabbed at my chest. The hatred in her eyes was staggering. It was like looking at a stranger, a monster I had created. It's exhausting, Dad, she spat. Dealing with you, watching you waste away, doing nothing. She paused, searching for the words that would hurt the most. The killing blow, you are useless. You contribute nothing. You're a burden. That's what you are. A miserable, selfish burden. The word hit me like a physical blow. It stole my breath. It cracked my heart in two. I staggered back. In my own home, on my birthday, after a lifetime of sacrifice. A burden. The silence in the room was heavy, thick with shock and pity. Kevin grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, painful. Sign the papers, old man. He snarled, his breath hot on my face. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Get your hands off me, I growled, pulling free. The anger was gone, replaced by a cold, terrifying numbness. Fine, Chloe yelled, her voice reaching a fever pitch. If you won't help us, if you won't be part of this family, then you can leave. She pointed toward the front door. Get out of my house. Your house? I whispered. The absurdity of it was almost laughable. If it didn't hurt so much. Yes, my house. Get out. Now. I looked around the room. I saw Eleanor Vance, an old friend of Margaret's, standing near the back. Her hand was covering her mouth. She looked horrified, but she said nothing. No one said anything. They were all cowards. Numb, disconnected. I walked toward the foyer. I grabbed my coat, my car keys. As I opened the front door, the freezing November air hit me like a wall. I stepped out. The door slammed shut behind me. I heard the lock click, loud, final, and then, incredibly, I heard the jazz quartet start up again. A cheerful tune. The party was continuing without me. They had already moved on, erased me from their lives. I drove. The city lights blurred through the unshed tears in my eyes. A burden, the word echoed in my mind, drowning out all other thoughts. I had given that girl everything. I worked 80-hour weeks, so she would never know want, never know struggle. I hadn't raised a daughter. I had created a monster. I ended up at the only place I felt safe, the only person I could trust. George. George had been my best friend since college, my business partner for 30 years. We built an empire together. We knew how to fight. We knew how to win. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. Thomas, what in the world happened? It's freezing out here. They kicked me out, George. I choked out, sinking onto his worn leather sofa. The warmth of his house enveloped me, but the chill in my soul remained. She called me a burden. I told him everything. The basement, the healache, the venom in Chloe's voice. George listened patiently. His expression grew darker with every detail. He wasn't just angry. He was furious. They waited until your birthday to pull this stunt. George shook his head in disgust. That's not just greedy, Thomas. That's cruel. Margaret would be horrified. Mentioning Margaret brought a fresh wave of pain. What do I do, George? I feel lost. I feel weak. Weak, George scoffed. He leaned forward, his eyes clear and focused. The eyes of a CEO. You are not weak, Thomas. You are wounded. He stood up, pacing the room, the strategist coming back to life. You do what we always did when we faced a hostile takeover, he said firmly. You cut off their supply lines. You starve them out. You take back control. He stopped, looking directly at me. They think you're just an old man with a big bank account. It's time to remind them who Thomas Peterson really is. The fog of shock and hurt began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. George was right. They had declared war. It was time I responded, not with words, but with actions. My phone, I said, reaching into my pocket. My hands were steady now. I spent the next 2 hours dismantling the life I had provided for them, piece by piece, brick by brick. The first call was to my private banker's emergency line. This is Thomas Peterson, I said. My voice was steady, authoritative, the voice of a CEO, not a victim. I need to freeze all secondary credit cards linked to my primary account immediately. Chloe Peterson and Kevin James. The operator hesitated. Sir, that's a significant action. Are you sure? Do it, I commanded, and suspend access to the joint checking account. While I waited, I thought about their upcoming vacation. Chloe had been bragging about it for weeks. Hawaii, first class, the most expensive beachfront hotel, all paid for by the burden. The operator came back. Sir, the cards and the account access have been frozen. Good. My next call was to the airline concierge service. Hello, this is Thomas Peterson. I need to cancel a reservation for tomorrow morning. 3 first-class tickets to Honolulu. I rattled off the confirmation code I had seen on the kitchen counter. Cancellation confirmed, Mr. Peterson. These are non-refundable tickets, I'm afraid. I don't care about the refund, I said, a small grim smile touching my lips. Just cancel them. I hung up. The counterattack was launched. Well done, George said, handing me a glass of whiskey. Now, we plan the next move, the eviction, and we need a lawyer, the best. The war had just begun, and I was ready to fight dirty. I barely slept that night. My mind raced, memories of Chloe as a little girl, her hand in mine. Those memories collided violently with the image of her cold, angry eyes. How did that sweet girl turn into this monster? Had I done this? The guilt gnawed at me, but the anger was stronger. The call came at 6:30 a.m., right on schedule. My phone buzzed angrily on the nightstand. Chloe's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 3 times, savoring the moment. Then I answered. "What did you do?" Her voice was shrill. Hysterical, I could hear the chaotic noise of the airport terminal behind her. The sound of chaos. "Good morning, Chloe. Having a nice trip?" I kept my voice calm, casual. "They won't let us on the plane. They said our tickets were canceled," she shrieked. "And my credit card? My card was declined at the coffee shop." "Declined? For a coffee?" She was hyperventilating. "We are stranded here. This is humiliating." "Humiliating? Good. That's strange," I said, sipping the coffee George had made. It tasted like victory. "Fix it, Daddy. Fix it right now. We have a schedule to keep. The children are upset." She always used the children when she was desperate. "I'm afraid I can't, Chloe," I said. "You see, I'm a burden." I let the word hang in the air between us. Heavy, sharp, and burdens don't usually pay for first-class tickets to Hawaii. She gasped. "You did this on purpose." The realization hitting her, finally, that I wasn't the weak old man she thought I was. "You wanted independence," I continued, my voice hardening. "Congratulations, you're independent. And independent people pay for their own vacations. They pay for their own lives. You can't do this to us." Kevin's voice suddenly came on the line, spitting with rage. "The real Kevin. This is theft, Thomas. We have rights." "You have no rights to my money, Kevin," I said, my voice cold as ice. "And as of last night, the funding has stopped. The bank of Thomas is closed. I'm sure you'll figure it out." I hung up before they could respond. My heart was pounding. The exhilaration was intense, but the pain was still there, deep beneath the surface. The war had truly begun, and it was about to get much uglier. The next few days were a whirlwind. George helped me hire a lawyer, Sarah Jenkins. Sharp, no nonsense. She specialized in high-conflict family disputes and elder abuse. "They are tenants at will," Sarah explained in our first meeting. "The house is solely in your name. We start the formal eviction process immediately. But be warned, Mr. Peterson. They will fight dirty." She was right. They became desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. Kevin showed up at George's house one afternoon. Hammering on the door, his expensive suit was wrinkled. He looked unhinged. "Thomas, I know you're in there," he yelled. His face was contorted in rage. The polished mask was gone. I opened the door. George stood right behind me. Solid, immovable. "What do you want, Kevin?" "You ruined me," he spat.
That contract I needed the loan for?
"It collapsed. My business is failing because of you. I lost everything." "You ruined yourself, Kevin," I said. "You tried to steal my home. You overplayed your hand." That's when he snapped. Kevin lunged at me, his hands clenched into fists. His eyes were wild. "I'll make you pay for this, old man." George stepped between us instantly. He pushed Kevin back forcefully. Kevin stumbled down the porch steps, landing hard on the walkway. "Get off the property before I call the police," George warned, his voice low and dangerous. Kevin scrambled to his feet. He backed away, pointing a trembling finger at me. "This isn't over, Thomas." He sped away, but I knew this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about to get much darker. Later that evening, my phone rang, an unknown number. I usually ignored them, but something told me to answer. "Mr. Peterson?" The voice was rough, gravelly, cold. "Who is this?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Name's Tony Russo. I'm an associate of Kevin James." The man paused. I could hear the faint sound of traffic in the background. "Kevin seems to be experiencing some liquidity issues. He owes a significant amount of money, and he suggested you might be able to help resolve the situation. Loan sharks. Kevin hadn't just failed in business. He was gambling, and he was losing. Big time." "I have nothing to do with Kevin's debts," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Kevin seems to think otherwise," Tony Russo said smoothly. He mentioned a house, a very valuable house. It would be a shame if something happened to it. A fire, maybe. Accidents happen all the time, especially to older folks. The threat was clear, direct, terrifying. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. Kevin hadn't just risked my finances. He had risked my life, and he was using my own home as collateral against his gambling debts. The danger was real, and it was closing in. If Kevin's tactic was aggression and threats, Chloe's was manipulation. And she knew my greatest weakness, my grandchildren. Emma and Liam, they were the lights of my life, 7 and 9 years old. The only innocent victims in this war. I used to pick them up from school every Friday. We would go for ice cream. It was the highlight of my week. That Friday, I drove to the school. I waited by the gate, excited to see them. The bell rang, children flooded out, but Emma and Liam didn't come out. I scanned the crowd. Panic started to rise in my chest. Then I saw them. Chloe was ushering them quickly toward her minivan on the other side of the parking lot, pulling them by the hand. Emma, Liam, I called out. They saw me. Their faces lit up. They started to wave, but Chloe pulled them into the car. She glared at me over the roof, her eyes filled with venom. Chloe, what are you doing? I hurried toward the van. Stay away from my children, she yelled, slamming the door shut. They're my grandchildren. You can't do this. I protested. I grabbed the door handle. It was locked. Chloe screamed through the closed window, her face twisted in cruelty, a cruelty I never knew she possessed. You want to see them? She yelled. Turn the money back on. Until then, you are dead to them. The ultimatum tore me apart. My money or my grandchildren. She knew exactly how to hurt me, the most. She sped away, and I saw Liam's small hand pressed against the back window, waving goodbye. I stood alone in the school parking lot. That was the moment I almost broke. I felt the despair creeping back in. I was winning the war but losing my soul. That night, the pain was unbearable. Losing the house was one thing, but losing my grandchildren? That was a wound that wouldn't heal. I sat in George's living room, staring into the fire. The fight drained out of me. I felt old, tired, defeated. George saw my distress. Thomas, we need leverage, he said firmly. We need to prove their intentions were malicious. And we need to get those kids away from them. Especially with this Russo character involved. They're not safe. Where do we look? I asked, exhausted. Let's start with the house, George suggested. Kevin is arrogant, and arrogant people leave trails. They are hiding something. We need to find it. We waited until we knew they were out, meeting with their lawyers, trying to delay the eviction. George knew a locksmith. He got us into the house quickly, quietly. Walking back into my home felt strange, cold, alien. It felt like a crime scene. We went straight to the master suite. My sanctuary, it had been completely transformed. Margaret's antique furniture was gone. Her photographs were nowhere to be seen. It was as if Margaret had been erased. As if I had been erased. They weren't just taking the house. They were destroying our legacy. We searched the office Kevin had set up. That's when we found them. The bank statements, hidden in a locked drawer. George jimmied it open. Massive debts. Credit cards maxed out. Loans defaulted on. But that wasn't the worst of it. Then we found the ledgers, detailed records of bets, huge losses, payments to Tony Russo. Kevin wasn't just a gambler. He was drowning in debt. And he was dangerous. If this story has your heart racing, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Every click helps us keep uncovering stories that deserve to be heard. And trust me, you'll want to see what we found next. As we were looking through the desk, we heard a car pull into the driveway. The sound of the engine, the car door slamming. Someone's home, George whispered. It was Chloe, home early. Quick, the closet, George hissed, grabbing the papers, pulling me into the darkness. We hid in the darkness of the office closet, cramped together, holding our breath. Surrounded by Kevin's expensive suits, the smell of his cologne was suffocating. We heard Chloe walk into the room. She was on the phone, sobbing. He's ruined us, Kevin, she cried.
And that man, Tony, he called again. He threatened the children. Kevin, what have you done?
We heard Kevin yelling on the other end of the line. Angry, desperate. It's Dad's fault. Chloe screamed. If he had just signed the papers, none of this would be happening. The risk of discovery was immense. We waited, cramped in the dark, listening to the chaos they had created, listening to them blame me for their own greed. Finally, she left the room, slamming the door behind her. We slipped out of the house, undetected. We had evidence of Kevin's debts, proof of the danger they were in, but I still clung to a desperate hope, a foolish hope, that Chloe was just manipulated by Kevin, that she wasn't truly this cruel, that my daughter was still in there somewhere. I was a fool. And then I remembered Margaret's safe. The realization hit me like a lightning bolt. Margaret knew, she always knew, it was hidden in the basement, behind a false panel in the storage room, the same basement they wanted to banish me to. The irony was bitter. I still had the key on my keychain, next to the key to the house I was locked out of. The next day we went back. The risk was immense, but I had to know the truth, the whole truth. I opened the safe. Inside were old photographs, jewelry, and a thick, leather-bound book, Margaret's diary. I hadn't been able to bring myself to read it before. It felt too private, too painful, like disturbing her rest. But now, desperate for answers, desperate to understand how this happened, I opened it. Margaret's familiar handwriting filled the pages. Elegant, precise, just like her. I sat on the cold basement floor and started reading. And then I found the entries about Chloe and Kevin. The truth I had been avoiding. October 12, 2022. Chloe brought Kevin over for dinner. He's charming, I suppose. But there's a coldness in his eyes that worries me. Thomas thinks I'm being overprotective. But I don't trust Kevin. There is a hunger in him that frightens me. My heart ached. Margaret had seen it all along, and I had been blind. December 2022. I overheard Chloe and Kevin talking. They think I'm asleep. Kevin is pressuring Chloe to ask Thomas for money. A lot of money. I kept reading. The words blurred through my tears. He said they need to secure their future before Thomas gets too old and squanders the inheritance. But the next part shattered me completely. Chloe agreed. She said Thomas is easy to manipulate, especially now that he's grieving, that he'll do anything for her. My own daughter. My heart is broken. The truth hit me like a physical blow. I dropped the diary. My hands were shaking. Chloe wasn't a victim. She was an accomplice. They had been planning this for years, waiting for Margaret to die, waiting for me to be vulnerable, using my grief against me. And then, the final entry, dated just a few weeks before she passed away. This was the twist that changed everything. The secret Margaret kept even from me. March 15, 2023. My health is failing. The doctors are not hopeful. I worry about Thomas. He's too trusting, too kind. Chloe's greed, fueled by Kevin's ambition, will destroy him if I don't stop it. I turned the page. My breath caught in my throat. I met with David Chen today, my private lawyer. I've set up a separate, irrevocable trust, funded by the investments Thomas doesn't know about. The ones I managed myself, quietly, over the years. A secret trust. Margaret had investments I didn't know about. It's an insurance policy. David will contact Thomas only if he is in dire need, or if Chloe attempts to seize control of the estate. I pray it never comes to that. Margaret, my ever-practical, loving Margaret, had protected me even from beyond the grave. She had foreseen the betrayal and put measures in place to save me. Tears streamed down my face. I clutched the diary to my chest. I felt a profound sense of gratitude for her love, and a deep shame for being so blind, for defending Chloe for so long. The discovery galvanized me. The sadness turned into a cold fury. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for Margaret's legacy. I was fighting for my grandchildren. The next morning my phone rang. A distinguished, calm voice was on the other end. "Mr. Peterson, this is David Chen. I was your late wife's attorney." I sat down, my heart pounding. "Mr. Chen," I found her diary. "I know about the trust. I am so sorry for your loss, Thomas." David said gently, Margaret instructed me to monitor the situation. When the eviction notice was filed, it triggered the conditions of the trust. I am here to help you. Margaret made sure you have the resources to fight this. The resources were substantial. Margaret had been brilliant, and she had saved me. But Chloe wasn't done yet. Desperation made her ruthless, and she was about to play her final card. 8 days later, I received a call from Sarah Jenkins. "Thomas, we have a serious problem," she said. Her voice was grim. "Chloe and Kevin have filed a petition for emergency guardianship. They are claiming you are mentally incompetent." I was stunned. Incompetent? How can they prove that? "It's a lie. They have affidavits from guests at the birthday party," Sarah said, claiming your behavior was erratic, aggressive, and they have a doctor willing to testify that you are showing signs of cognitive decline, early onset dementia. They were trying to steal my autonomy, my dignity, my life. "We have to fight this, Sarah," I said, panic rising in my chest. "If they get guardianship, they will take everything. The house, the money, the trust. They will silence me. They will put me in a home and forget about me." The thought of losing my freedom was more terrifying than any financial loss. It was a living death. Margaret hadn't trusted him either. She always said his eyes were hungry. Tonight, they looked starved. We prepared for the competency hearing. It was a humiliating process. I had to undergo psychiatric evaluations, cognitive tests, all to prove I was sane. I was assigned a court-appointed evaluator, Dr. Anya Sharma. She was young, polished, ambitious. Her office was sterile, cold. "Mr. Peterson," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "Tell me about your grief. It must be overwhelming." I told her the truth, the pain, the betrayal, the fear, she patiently, taking notes. She seemed sympathetic, understanding. "It's understandable that you might be feeling confused," she said softly. "Paranoid, losing track of things, grieving your wife, and now this conflict with your daughter. It's a lot for anyone to handle." She was twisting my words, gently, subtly, planting the seeds of doubt. "I'm not confused, doctor," I said firmly. "I am angry, and I am fighting for my life." Dr. Sharma smiled, a cold, clinical smile. "Of course you are, but sometimes anger can cloud our judgment, make us see enemies where there are none." I realized then she wasn't impartial. She was working for Kevin. He had bought her. The game was rigged. And I was walking into a trap. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom felt cold, judgmental. Chloe and Kevin sat across from me, smug, confident. They thought they had won. Chloe took the stand. She was the picture of a concerned daughter. She painted a picture of a grieving father lost in his sorrow, a man who forgot names, flew into irrational rages. She cried crocodile tears. It was an Oscar-worthy performance, and utterly sickening. "He just hasn't been the same since Mom died," she sobbed. "We try to help him, but he pushes us away. He's paranoid. We just want to protect him from himself." Then Dr. Sharma took the stand. Her testimony was devastating. "In my professional opinion," she stated confidently, looking directly at the judge, "Mr. Peterson is exhibiting clear signs of cognitive decline. His paranoia regarding his son-in-law's finances, his aggressive outbursts. He is unable to manage his own affairs. He needs protection." It felt like a punch to the gut. The betrayal by a medical professional. The violation of trust. Then it was my turn. I took the stand. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. Chloe's lawyer was ruthless. He twisted my words, questioned my memory, tried to provoke me. Then came the ambush. He brought up Margaret's final days in the hospital. A deeply personal question. "Isn't it true, Mr. Peterson, that you argued with the doctors?" he pressed. "That you refused to accept the diagnosis? That you were hysterical, so distraught that you accused them of negligence?" He was trying to trigger an emotional outburst, to make me look unstable, unhinged. I felt the tears welling in my eyes, the grief threatening to overwhelm me. I had to fight back the emotion, maintain my composure. I knew that any slip-up would cost me everything. I took a deep breath. I was advocating for my wife, I said, my voice trembling slightly, but clear. I was grieving, but I was not incompetent. I held my ground, but I could see the doubt in the judge's eyes. They were winning. The lies were convincing. And then Sarah Jenkins stood up, calm, confident, ruthless. She presented the evidence. Kevin's gambling debts, the ledgers, the loan shark demands, the recording of the threat from Tony Russo. Sarah had subpoenaed the phone records. This is not about protection, Your Honor, Sarah argued. This is about desperation. This is about greed. This is about a systematic attempt to defraud a grieving father. Then she called a surprise witness, Eleanor Vance, Margaret's friend who was at the party. Eleanor took the stand. She looked nervous, but determined. Eleanor, Sarah began. Did Margaret Peterson ever express concerns about Chloe and Kevin? Eleanor nodded, tears in her eyes. Yes, she was terrified. She told me Kevin was dangerous, and that Chloe was changing. She was worried about their spending. She made me promise to look out for Thomas if anything happened to her. The courtroom murmured. Chloe looked furious. And finally, Sarah produced Margaret's diary. I have here the diary of the late Margaret Peterson, she announced. Chloe's face turned pale. Kevin stiffened in his seat. They didn't know about the diary. They didn't know Margaret had exposed them. Sarah read the entry from December 1st. The entry where Chloe called me easy to manipulate. She said Thomas is easy to manipulate, especially now that he's grieving. The courtroom went silent. The words hung in the air. The truth exposed. Ugly. Painful. The judge looked at Chloe. His expression hardened with disgust. The judge dismissed the petition immediately. He reprimanded Chloe and Kevin for their blatant attempt to exploit the legal system. He called their actions reprehensible. He also ordered an investigation into Dr. Sharma's testimony. We had won. The relief was overwhelming, but the victory felt hollow. The depth of the betrayal was unfathomable. There was no coming back from this. The final blow came a week later. The eviction notice had been served. They had 30 days to vacate. I received a notification from an estate sale company. An estate sale was scheduled at my house. This weekend, Chloe and Kevin, knowing the eviction was imminent, were trying to liquidate my assets before they were locked out. Margaret's heirlooms, our memory, all being sold to the highest bidder. They were scorching the earth as they retreated. I rushed to the house, desperate to stop the sale. The driveway was full of cars. Strangers were walking through my home, picking through Margaret's belongings like vultures. I saw a woman holding Margaret's favorite vase, the one we bought in Italy on our honeymoon, haggling over the price. The emotional toll of seeing my life dismantled piece by piece, sold off like junk, almost broke my resolve. I wanted to scream, to throw them all out, to burn the house down rather than let them desecrate our memories. But I stopped myself. I had to choose. Intervene and cause a scene, giving them more ammunition against me. Or let go of the physical remnants of my past. I let it go. It was just stuff. Margaret wasn't in those things. She was in my heart. She was in the secret trust she left me. But the cruelty of their actions solidified my decision. It was time to end this. Completely. Permanently. I called Chloe. I asked her to meet me at Sarah Jenkins' office. Kevin was with her. They looked exhausted, defeated, but still defiant. They sat across the desk from me. The silence was thick with tension. Hatred. What do you want now? Kevin sneered. Come to gloat? To twist the knife? I'm here to make you a final offer, I said. My voice calm. I looked at Chloe, searching for any sign of remorse, any hint of the little girl I used to know. There was nothing, just cold resentment. Sarah Jenkins slid a thick folder across the desk toward them. We know about the gambling debts, Sarah dad. Her voice cold. The loan sharks. The guardianship fraud. We also have evidence of your collusion with Dr. Sharma, who is now under investigation and likely to lose her license. She opened the folder, showing them the evidence. The bank statements, the diary, the phone records with Tony Russo. We have enough evidence to press criminal charges, Sarah continued. for fraud and elder abuse. You will both likely face significant jail time, and given the threats made by Mr. Russo, the DA is very interested in this case, especially the threats against the children." Chloe gasped, her eyes wide with fear. For the first time, she realized the consequences of her actions. Kevin just glared at me, but I could see the fear behind his arrogance. He was cornered. However, I continued, "I am willing to drop the charges against Chloe under one condition." They both looked up, hope flickering in their eyes. They thought I was weak, that I would cave. "You will sign a settlement agreement, relinquishing all claims to my estate," I said. "Now and forever. You will agree to the immediate eviction. You have 24 hours. I paused, taking a deep breath. This was the hardest part, but it was necessary. "And," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "you will sign over temporary custody of Emma and Liam to me." "Custody?" Chloe shrieked, jumping to her feet. "You want to steal my children now? After you ruined us?" The irony was staggering. "I want to protect them, Chloe," I said, "from the toxic environment you and Kevin have created, from the danger you put them in. They deserve stability. They deserve love. They don't deserve to be used as pawns." "We love them," Kevin protested. "You love money, Kevin," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "You were willing to sacrifice everything for it, including your children, including your freedom." I turned to Chloe. "This is your last chance, Chloe. Sign the agreement or face the consequences. Jail time, a criminal record. You will lose everything." She hesitated. Looking from me to Kevin, I saw the internal struggle playing out on her face. Fear versus greed. But then Kevin grabbed her arm. His grip, right. "Don't sign it, Chloe," he whispered, loud enough for me to hear. "He's bluffing. He's too weak to send his own daughter to jail. He loves you too much." He still thought I was weak. After everything that had happened, he still underestimated me. He still didn't understand that the man I was had died on my 65th birthday. Chloe looked at me, her eyes hardening. She believed him. She still thought she could manipulate me. "He's right," she said, her voice cold. "You won't do it. You can't erase me from your life. I'm your daughter. You erased yourself, Chloe," I said, my voice heavy with finality. "When you called me a burden," I nodded to Sarah Jenkins. She picked up the phone. "Please connect me to the district attorney's office," she said into the receiver, her voice calm and professional. Chloe's defiance crumbled. She realized it wasn't a bluff, that I was willing to do whatever it took. "Wait," she screamed, pulling away from Kevin. "Stop. I'll sign it. I'll sign it." Kevin tried to stop her. "No, Chloe, don't. We can fight this." But she fought him off, scrambling for the pen on the desk. Desperate, terrified, she signed the agreement, her hand shaking so badly the signature was barely legible. Tears streamed down her face, tears of defeat. "It's done," Sarah Jenkins said, taking the papers. She notarized them quickly. Kevin stared at Chloe, his face twisted in disbelief. "And betrayal. The alliance was broken. You weak fool," he spat at her. "You just ruined us." He turned to me, his eyes blazing with hatred. "This isn't over, Thomas." "No, Kevin, it's over," I said. I stood up and walked out of the office. Without looking back, I felt no joy, no triumph, just a profound sense of loss. And a heavy weight lifted from my shoulders. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Chloe and Kevin were evicted the next day. Kevin was arrested shortly after. Faced with the evidence of his gambling debts and his association with Tony Russo, he took a plea deal. He went to jail. Dr. Sharma lost her medical license. Justice was served. I sold the house. It was too big, too full of painful memories. Ghosts of the past. Echoes of betrayal. I couldn't live there anymore. I used the money from the sale, along with the trust Margaret had left me, to buy a small, comfortable condo near George. A fresh start. David Chen helped me manage the finances. I was granted temporary custody of Emma and Liam. At 65, I was raising children again. It was challenging, exhausting, but it gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. It gave me a reason to live. The first few months were difficult. The children were traumatized by the chaos, the yelling, the uncertainty. I enrolled them in therapy, surrounded them with love and stability. George helped. Eleanor Vance often visited, sharing stories about Margaret. Slowly, patiently, we started to heal the wounds their parents had inflicted. We became a family, a real family. I started a charitable foundation in Margaret's name, using the funds from her secret trust to support organizations that help victims of elder abuse, financial exploitation. It felt like a way to honor her memory and to find meaning in the wreckage of my life, to turn my pain into purpose. Margaret had saved me, and now I was paying it forward. It's been 2 years since that fateful birthday. I'm 67 now. I'm sitting on the balcony of my condo, watching Emma and Liam play in the park below. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It's peaceful. I am finally at peace. The doorbell rings. I wasn't expecting anyone. I open the door. Chloe is standing there. She looks different. Older, tired. The expensive clothes are gone, replaced by a simple dress. Her hair is pulled back. No makeup. Her eyes are clear, but filled with a profound sadness and remorse. "Dad?" she whispers, her voice trembling. I stare at her, the silence stretching between us. I haven't seen her since the day she signed the agreement in the lawyer's office. 2 years. "I'm sorry," she says, tears streaming down her face. Raw, honest tears, not the crocodile tears from the courtroom. I know it's too late. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I had to tell you I was wrong. She tells me about the past 2 years, the struggle to survive without my money, the divorce from Kevin, the minimum wage jobs, the cramped apartment, the reality of the world she had been sheltered from, the therapy that helped her understand the depth of her selfishness, her entitlement, her greed, her cruelty. "I finally understand what you did for me," she says, her voice breaking. "The sacrifices you made, and I threw it all away. For money. For Kevin. For a lifestyle I thought I deserved." She looks down at her hands, rough and unmanicured now. "You were never the burden, Dad," she says, looking up at me, her eyes pleading. I was. I look at her, my daughter, broken and remorseful. The anger I carried for so long has faded, replaced by a quiet sorrow for what could have been, for what was lost. I don't know if I can forgive her. The trust is broken, perhaps forever. I don't know if we can ever repair the damage she caused. The wounds are deep, the scars remain. But for the first time in a long time, I feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe not for us, but for her, and for my grandchildren. "Chloe," I say, my voice rough with emotion, "the children are in the park. Would you like to see them?" Her eyes widen, filled with a desperate longing, a fear of rejection. She nods, unable to speak. I lead her to the balcony. We stand side by side, watching Emma and Liam laugh as they chase each other through the grass. Life is unpredictable. Family can betray you. Wealth can destroy you. But love, true love, the love of a partner, the love for grandchildren endures. It survives the wreckage. I was Thomas Peterson. I had been called a burden. I had faced the ultimate betrayal. But I had survived. And standing there, with my daughter by my side, and my grandchildren playing below, I realized that my legacy was not defined by what I had lost, but by what I had saved, myself and them. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.